Good evening. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to start a little differently tonight. We're going to take a few deep breaths. And really bring ourselves into this space. This sacred community. This sacred time. In a few moments, we will pray fully with our hearts, our voices, our bodies, and our minds. But first, settling in with shared silence. thoughts as we enter Shabbat together. Joshua Heschel writes, the beginning of prayer is praise. The power of prayer is song. First we sing, then we understand. Song restores the soul. Praise repairs spiritual deficiency. To praise is to make God present to our minds and our hearts. And Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav writes, tears break through doors. Singing smashes down walls. Let's see if we can't use this Shabbat to break down some doors, to smash some walls. Shalom Aleichem, page 11.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Borchem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu B'nei Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
It's my pleasure to call on Leah and Sam and their families, who will lead us in lighting candles. We'll be joined by the end of the service by Ilan, who's becoming bar mitzvah this Shabbat, and his family. They're stuck behind a mudslide and on their way. So Leah and Sam, you guys are going to have to carry it for now, and Ilan will join us in a little
You
bit.
got this.
You could bring your families on up.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav להדליק נר של שבת.
Thank you, Shabbat Shalom. Page 23. need all of it. I started talking about praise, but we need all of it to welcome the Shabbat angels. The praise and the joy and the elation and the rage and the heartache and the sadness and the disappointment and the surprise and the delight and the wonder. It all mixes together. It all rises to the heavens as we welcome the angels, welcome the Shabbat bride. Chadoti, page 29.
One moment of technical difficulties, and then we'll be all set.
Page 29. One of the prayers in the liturgy between Baruch Hu and Shema has this line in it. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir. Don't remove your love for us. Don't ever remove your love for us. But there's a Sephardic version that says ve'ahavata lo tasir. You couldn't possibly remove your love for us. Your love will never be removed. Turning to Shema, what is the oneness that we praise? Maybe it is just an unending well of love. Love that will never, ever, ever go anywhere. Shema Yisrael, page 38.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Mi Chamocha, page 39.
בקודש, נורא תהי לו רוסי פלא, נורא תהי לו רוסי פלא.
על איכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה, זה עניינו וערערו, זה עניינו וערערו.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני Kodesh, Dora Tehilo Roseve, Dora Tehilo Roseve. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la.
Keep that going. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Now try this. Ooh, 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 again. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Keep that going. Beni uven bnei Yisrael oti leolam. Beni uven bnei Yisrael oti leolam. Again. Beni uven bnei Yisrael oti leolam. Beni uven bnei Yisrael oti leolam. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. לדורותם ברית עולם. לדורותם ברית עולם.
Some days you're the melody, some days you're the bass line. Let's rise for Amidah, beginning on page 44.
page 45. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים ומתים אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה.
Well, we're supposed to pray the Mishaberach now, but I feel like we just did. Right? Shelley just led us in the Gevurot, but in the middle of it, it says, Somech noflim v'rofech cholim, God who lifts up the fallen and heals those who are sick. So I want to invite all of us in this room who are holding someone who is suffering from any illness of the heart or the soul or the body, and to offer a prayer. It may be a prayer for ourselves, an aspect of ourselves, part of our lives, or someone we care about deeply. Page 239.
Mishaberach Avo past, the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Persevera, imotei, bekor habracha, mavotei. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So we prayed our hearts, we've prayed for others, and now I just want to make sure that we know each other. So if there's someone next to you or behind you or across the aisle, introduce yourself. That someone you don't know. If someone you know, don't say hello to them. But find someone new, introduce yourself, and say Shabbat Shalom. I hope you met someone new and perhaps reconnected with someone you already knew. So just a couple of announcements first. Next Shabbat, next Friday night is MLK Shabbat. It is going to be a really fabulous evening. I encourage you to come, invite your friends. We're going to have a youth orchestra joining us. Jenny Asher, our cantorial intern, has arranged most of our music for a community that is going to be playing with us and for us and amongst us. It should be really a fabulous evening. Also, Rabbi Mari Chernow and I are starting up our adult ed series again on Sundays. So please look at the calendar online. We're doing 4 weeks, followed by a little break, and then we're inviting 4 different scholars to teach also on 4 different Sundays. All of it is in the calendar. Look online for that. Also, I'm back to doing art. So we're having a gallery tour of the Marciano latest exhibit on Exodus. Believe it or not, I'm going to be the docent. And then we're having a gallery tour at the Skirball as well. So all of those are online. Go to tioh.org and you'll see it all. So I want to dedicate this sermon to all of us who are in mourning, all of us who are suffering the death of a loved one or observing a yahrzeit. So, true story. I remember when I was a newly minted rabbi. I was only 4.5 years into my rabbinate. And a young mother, who some of you may remember, Lisa Brahms, she was very sick. And she had 4 young children, and she was going to die. So about 6 months before her death, I suggested that she consider writing a letter to all 4 of her children, the youngest of whom was in nursery school at the time. And I remember sitting in her home and sitting next to her and suggesting that idea. And then I remember that our conversation ended. I don't know how it ended, but I remember it ended. About 6 months later, July 2001, sometime before she died, she actually called me and asked me to come to her home again. And in a very loving way, she let me know how angry she was with me. She explained to me that even though I may have known that she was going to die, she was not interested in hearing that information, and she was not interested in writing letters to her children because she was not in that place. She was praying, and she was in a state of hope. And she was angry at me for pushing her into a place that she wasn't yet in. The letters I had suggested were about my need, and I wasn't responding to where she was at. And so I sat in silence, humbly. Most likely, knowing who I am, I was probably crying silently. I knew I had overstepped my place and my space. I've never forgotten what Lisa taught me. Never. Never forgotten about what anava is, what humility is, knowing our place and our space, especially when it comes to death and preparing for one's death. There's no right way. Everyone has their own journey. And this week's portion, Vayichi, the last portion in the book of Genesis, actually contains two deaths. First Jacob and then Joseph. And Jacob happens to have many death scenes, many deathbed scenes in this one portion. He calls forward his 12 children and his 2 grandchildren, and he gives them each blessings. And then Joseph also does something at his deathbed. But they do different things and they ask for different things. So Jacob offers these blessings to his children, some of which seem like great blessings. You know, if I was Asher, I would love to hear that I would provide delicacies for the king. But if I was Issachar, and I was being told by my dad that I'd be subjected to forced labor, I might think differently. He also talked about twice how he wanted to make sure that he was buried in the land of Canaan, particularly in the cave of Machpelah. Joseph also had things to do at his deathbed. He also did something twice. He was worried about something else. He seemed to not be so concerned with what he wanted to convey to his brothers, but instead he seemed to be in tune with what they might be worried about, given his impending death. See, at the very end of the Parsha, the end of the whole book of Genesis, in fact, he reassures his brother 2 times, Pakad Yifkod. Don't worry. God will definitely take care of you and bring you out of Egypt. Remember, these are the same brothers who sold him into slavery, who hated him, who he was disconnected to for years and years. And yet at the end of his life, he says, Pakad Yifkod. Really, don't worry. You'll be fine. And they must be worried because their father, Jacob, just died. And now Joseph, the only person who had any sort of strings with the head of Egypt, was also about to die. This verb, by the way, pakad yifkod, that you could hear happens twice, may ring bells for you, right? On Rosh Hashanah, we hear this verb because Sarah is struggling with her infertility, and we hear that God, pakad et Sarah, God really remembers Sarah, and she gets pregnant. And then in next week's Torah portion, stay tuned, next week's Torah portion, at the beginning of the book of Exodus, we hear this verb again, pakad, pakadati. Absolutely, God takes notice of all the Israelites and their moaning and their horrible experience with slavery, and God then promises to free us. It seems as though the patriarchs have very different messages that they emphatically want to convey to their descendants. Jacob is saying, listen to my insights about all of you, whether you want to hear them or not. And Joseph is saying, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And then I wonder, what would I want to say on my deathbed? And who would I want to witness and share that with? God willing, I hope it's a long time from now. Perhaps the end of Genesis and the Torah is inviting us to ask ourselves this week that very question. What do we want to say, and to whom? There's a very beautiful book titled Deathbed Wisdom of Hasidic Masters. It compiles 43 teachings of different Hasidic masters and what they supposedly said or did on their deathbed. I just want to share my favorite one. It's Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhinsk. He lived in Poland, mid-1700s, third generation Hasidic Rebbe. So here's, according to tradition, Rabbi Elimelech was approaching his time for departure. And he placed his hands on the heads of 4 of his closest disciples. And what did he do? The Hebrew says he distributed aspects of his soul to them. He distributed aspects of his soul to them. To the seer of Lublin, he gave eyes, light to his eyes. To the Maggid of Koznich, he gave strength in his heart. To Rabbi Mendel of Prusitsk, don't ask me, he gave the soul that was in his brain. And to Rav Apt, he gave the strength that was in his mouth. Wow, distributing aspects of his soul. What a beautiful idea and metaphor. And perhaps Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhinsk is teaching us it's not about what we teach, but it's about sharing our soul, sharing what lights us up, what brings us strength, what values guide us. Not so the living can mimic each of us, but so they can be inspired by our unique learned wisdom, and then be able to translate our soul knowledge on their own, for themselves, in their own lives. Lisa Brahms taught me that we all have our own path toward death. Some of us actually won't have the opportunity to intentionally distribute aspects of our soul to those we love because we die in ways that don't give us a chance to do that. And yet, I actually believe that the soul wisdom of the deceased somehow does manage to land on the souls that are meant to hear our wisdom. And if we're open, and we're able, we can receive their knowledge. Perhaps you are remembering someone now. And so I invite you to think about them and think about the soul knowledge they have passed on to you. This week we remember the yahrzeits of Malka Aroni, Mary Brill, Robert Harris, Robert Holo, Anita Levitan, Nicholas Nico Linish, Louis Lippman, Burton Sunkin, Alexander Winnick. And we're in the Shloshim time of Peter Genovese and Noah Modisat. If I mentioned a name and you're observing a yahrzeit, please rise. And if I didn't mention a name, please rise and say their name so we know who you're remembering. Zichronam Livracha, may their soul wisdom pass on to each one of us. If it's your tradition to rise for Kaddish, please do. We're on page 292. As the mourners lead us in Kaddish, 292. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach brutei, v'almich malchutei. V'chayechon of Yonechon of Chayet to Kol Beit Yisrael. Va'agala v'izman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Al Mei Al Maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei Dekudesha Brechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Say shalom.
Hallelujah.
bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down.
Elon and Leah and Orly, please, and Sam, please come on up and lead us in Kiddush. We're on page, I don't know, I think
294.
294, come back here. And I know that there are some people who are here for the first time. Please make sure to walk up to us and introduce yourselves so we can welcome you.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav,
ורצבנו כשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו זיכרון מעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת לחיים.
Now you can drink.
The juice, yes.
Please lead us.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon.
la We definitely made it.